I watched Diana blossom from a shy young girl, 18 years old, at Balmoral Castle. I watched the years pass by. She was pushed in the deep end and told to swim. She was told to survive. She was never taught to survive. She learned very quickly, and she did. And through the romantic years, and then through the power dressing years, and then becoming an icon, I watched all of that.
The Princess of Wales was a new kind of royal. She carried out her duties with elegance and style, just like other members of the royal family. But there was a difference. She wasn't stuffy, responding to people naturally, and the people took her to their hearts.
She tore out pages from that dusty old book and she rewrote those rules. She changed the royal family forever. And lots of things happened in those 10 years. So my life with her was filled with fun, with happiness, with drama, controversy. I saw her as beautiful inside as she was on the outside. What an incredible human being. We will never see the likes of her again. In the summer of 1980, the Queen told me that a young girl was coming to stay for the weekend. Will you meet her at the front door and show her a room? Of course, Your Majesty. So I'm standing in the front hallway of Balmoral Castle on the black and white tiles, waiting for this car to arrive. And out of the car comes a shy young girl that nobody knew who she was. She had one little suitcase in the back. Is that all you've brought with you? You're here for the weekend. You have to go to hunting, shooting, you have to go to the Gillies Ball, tea parties, lunch parties, and that's all you have. She says, will it do? I said, I think we'd better take you to her room and find out. I showed her to her room. Will you stay for a while and have a chat with me? I'm completely out of my depth, she said. And as I closed the door that day, I noticed the name on the door, Lady Diana Spencer.
It was during a weekend house party that Prince Charles and Lady Diana took notice of each other for the first time.
It was 1977. Prince Charles came to stay as a friend of my sister Sarah's for a shoot. We sort of met in a ploughed field.
Well, I remember thinking what a very jolly and amusing and attractive 16-year-old she was. And, I mean, great fun and fancy and full of life and everything.
He was the world's most eligible bachelor, a magnet for admiring and aspiring young women. One name mentioned more than most was Princess Astrid of Luxembourg, even though she was a Catholic. Then a new name emerged. Lady Di, the name she would be known by throughout the world.
Well, Diana was from quite an aristocratic background. She wasn't obviously royalty. She was termed quite unkindly a commoner, although she was constantly rubbing shoulders with royalty because her childhood was based in part up in Sandringham, so she was often on the estate with the royals. Her sister had gone out with Prince Charles, so she knew the family well, and she was essentially circulating in those sort of quite high society circles. Well, it was actually when Charles had been going out with Diana's older sister Sarah that they first became acquainted with each other, and they had a little bit of a rapport. Obviously, she was considerably younger than him and quite a naive, I think, shy 16-year-old when they first kind of clocked eyes on each other. And gradually, I think this friendship blossomed, and it soon became apparent that this young girl had stolen the prince's affections, and the press got onto it and were following her around somewhat at the flat she lived in London.
How well are you coping with all the press attention?
Well, as you can see, You can tell.
Are you bearing up with it quite well, though? Because it must be quite a strain with all of us now.
Well, it is, naturally.
And it soon became apparent that actually they had become an item, and it was quite a surprise, of course, because Charles had been dating her sister.
Lady Diana was back at the Pimlico kindergarten where she teaches this morning, but polite as ever, she was saying nothing about her weekend with Prince Charles at Sandringham to the assembled press corps. Instead, she drove off in her brand new mini metro with a smile, though I managed to have a word with her later outside her Kensington flat. Is there any possibility of any announcement of your marriage in the near future? Can you tell me? Can you tell me if there's any possibility?
I'm not going to say anything, afraid.
Right, but Prince Charles did give us a hint himself. He said we wouldn't have to wait too long. He said we wouldn't have to wait too long. Was he completely off theme? Was he?
Sorry.
Was he completely off theme when he said we wouldn't have to wait too long?
No.
In February 1981, the waiting was over. Buckingham Palace announced that Prince Charles and Lady Diana were engaged. The ring was a sapphire surrounded by diamonds. The couple looked happy and relaxed, delighted, like everyone else, that a wedding would take place. Earl Spencer and Lady Diana's stepmother celebrated among the crowds outside the palace gates. Inside, Lady Diana was facing up to a future she could hardly have dreamt of.
Yesterday you were a nanny looking after children. Now you're about to marry the Prince of Wales, and one day you would, in all likelihood, be Queen. It's a tremendous change for someone, if I may say, of 19 to make all of a sudden, the transition.
It is, but I've had a small run out to it all in the last 6 months. And next to Prince Charles and I can't go wrong. He's there with me.
Difficult to find the right sort of word, isn't it, really? Just delighted and happy. And I'm amazed that she's been brave enough to take me on.
And I suppose in love.
Of course.
Whatever in love means. So.
Well, it
You can
obviously
put your own
means,
interpretation.
obviously means two very happy people.
Yes,
Once
absolutely.
again,
As you can see.
congratulations.
Well, from us, congratulations.
Thank you
Thank you
very
very
much.
much. Very kind.
She had to learn the restrictions of royal life. Never again would she be able to walk quietly down to the shops. Prince Charles had to keep the engagements he'd accepted before the announcement of the engagement, and this meant some separation. Diana had to accept this and do her best to hide her feelings. She made frequent trips to see her wedding dress being made. Exactly what it would look like became a national obsession.
The wedding day weather. It's sunny in London and rain looks unlikely. And though there could be some cloud, it'll be pretty patchy. Temperatures this afternoon getting up to 22 degrees centigrade. That's about 72 degrees Fahrenheit.
In 2.5 hours' time, the procession sets off from Buckingham Palace, and the route is already packed with crowds to watch it go by.
So off they went, all up the Mall. The crowd was suitably noisy, but there was a sense of waiting. In their book today, the bride was the star of the show.
I, Diana Frances,
I, Diana Frances,
take thee, Charles Philip Arthur George,
take thee, Philip Charles Arthur George,
to my wedded husband,
to my wedded husband,
to have and to hold,
to have and to hold,
from this day forward,
from this day forward,
according to God's holy law,
according to God's holy law,
and thereto I give thee my troth.
and thereto I give thee my troth.
The most watched event in human history was her wedding day. And we still look at that footage today. The longest train in royal history, the most creased dress in royal history. But the princess was brimming with hope and love for the future. She fell in love with her prince. And there they were, a golden couple.
Madam, how are you enjoying married life?
Highly recommend it.
How do you like Balmoral as a place?
Lovely.
Have you cooked a breakfast yet?
I don't eat breakfast.
Also had to master the royal technique of remembering your position and keeping station. All this was very new and strange for her, but she was learning fast. She was a hit with the crowds wherever she went. She especially enjoyed meeting children.
The princess was eager to move to the dance floor, to the applause of the 700 guests. To the strains of Isn't She Lovely, the pair went into a royal shuffle. They soon loosened up to a kind of rock and roll, which proved to be an enormous crowd pleaser.
The princess seemed unintimidated by state occasions with the world's leaders. Here in Indonesia, she politely turned down President Suharto's offer of champagne. But occasionally she showed she was still in awe of her royal status. Why else would she collect a place card with her name on for a souvenir? The royal couple appeared to all the world a perfect match. They seemed totally at ease together in public, and the prince was never slow to sing his wife's praises.
At that time, everybody was saying, good luck, and I hope everything goes well, and how lucky you are to be engaged to such a lovely lady. And my goodness, I was lucky enough to marry her. And we had many messages. It's amazing what ladies do when your back's turned.
For the first few years, it seemed this royal honeymoon would never end. But behind the scenes, it was all very different.
Well, Charles was so used to having all the attention on him, which it had been since he was born. He didn't like the idea that they walked down the street, say, when they were doing a royal engagement, and the crowd were calling, Diana, Diana. So he felt surplus and didn't really know what to do with himself.
It was a form of jealousy, yes, it was.
Which we have come across during our visit to Canada. Overwhelmed is really almost an understatement. We've been spoiled thoroughly by the approach and by the enthusiasm and people's quite extraordinary warmth. And really, all I can say is we've both been greatly touched.
Well, Charles was a very old-fashioned a very respectful, charming man.
No, I have not.
Again? Will you be doing it again?
No, far too over, that sort of thing. I should have to go to an osteopath after that.
But because of who he is and the life that he's led, he is used to getting his own way, and he's used to getting his own way quickly.
Prince Charles would say to her, "Well, I married you, I made you a princess. You weren't born royal. I'm the royal." So it would peeve him when on royal visits people would be shouting on one side of the street, "We want Diana, we want Diana." And I think in some interviews he actually did say, "I wish I could split my wife in half to do both sides of the street," because they don't actually want me.
The Di mania continued. Prince Charles was proud of his wife, but it was now becoming obvious that the crowds wanted to see her more than him. It's been suggested that the prince was caught completely off his guard by this, and that his pride became mixed with a twinge of jealousy. He joked about it in public.
I haven't yet worked out a method of splitting my wife in half. She can do both sides.
And he referred to his wife's popularity again at a banquet in New Zealand.
I've come to the conclusion that really it would have been far easier to have had two wives. To have covered both sides of the street. And I could have walked down the middle, directing the operation.
This is a man who's been born to be king. This is a man who has been treated from the very beginning as a god. Suddenly being eclipsed by this woman, he wasn't very happy. Remember, he is God in his own kingdom. He lives in a world where no one says no. Everybody says yes. What does that make a man?
Sorry, I didn't see you.
I wish you
Sorry.
luck, darling. Wish you
You're hugging the lamb.
I'm hugging it. I'm hugging it all this side. You look
Are you on your way shopping?
No.
Lucky me. I see the sun out, isn't it? It's changed.
Wish you luck. Did you enjoy your holiday?
Very much.
The boys did, I think.
Right.
Made our day. Bye-bye.
During this time, of course, Diana was visiting Balmoral and Sandringham and all the royal residences, and actually got to know me very well. I remember her showing me the honeymoon pictures. I remember her telling me that she was carrying another baby, which was Harry. She was at Balmoral wearing a very beautiful tartan evening dress for the Gillies ball, and she pushed me into the dining room. "Put your hand on my tummy," she said. I said, "No, I can't do that. You're a royal princess." She took my hand and placed it on her tummy. "Can you feel that?" she said. And a little kick. She says, "It's a boy." "You shouldn't have told me that. That is a state secret. Now, if it gets out, you'll blame me." She says, "But I'm trusting you with that secret." It was the first time she'd actually trusted me. She began trusting me with more, telling me that her marriage wasn't all it should be. "I need somebody like you, Paul. I need someone like you for the future. I've got no one I can trust in. Would you think about leaving the Queen and come and work for me?" Now, I had the best job in the world. I wasn't about to leave the Queen of England. "If you come and live with me, I'll give you a beautiful cottage in the countryside at Highgrove, and you and your two children and your wife can grow with my family and William and Harry, and we'll be just one big happy family. Think about it. Life would be much better for you the standard would be higher. I thought about it and thought it was the right future for my family. Living and working with the Queen was far more easy than living with Diana. With the Queen, we always knew that her life ran with routines and protocols and timetables. We knew that breakfast would be 9 o'clock, lunch would be 1 o'clock, tea would be 5 o'clock, and dinner would be 8:15. It was the same every day. It's Groundhog Day at Buckingham Palace. With Diana, anything could happen. No routine, no timetables, nothing. We might skip lunch, we might be shopping, we could be doing anything during the day. So life was more exciting with Diana. But the difference between the two worlds was I always knew where I was with the Queen. I always knew where the line was in the sand. I knew when not to cross that line, and I knew to stay and bow. I was a servant. With Diana, it was, come and sit down, have a cup of tea with me, have a cup of coffee. Don't just stand there. I used to stand every morning waiting for the princess to come through from her dressing room. And every morning, standing there with a half a grapefruit and a cup of black coffee, I'd bow and say, "Good morning, Your Royal Highness." "For goodness sake," she'd say, "when are you going to stop doing that? It's just me and you in the room. Sit down, have a cup of coffee with me and tell me what's been going on." That was her world. Diana did things differently because you never know what's going to happen from one minute to the next. I'd have a note on my desk to say, "Please call me at 7:30. Or it could be 7:15, or it could be 6:15. We never knew from one day to the next.
Well, I think Princess Diana, like the rest of the world, was caught up in the fairy tale that was her own royal relationship, and she was willing it to work, as was everyone else. Actually, the reality behind Palace Gates is that pretty quickly it had started falling apart. She didn't have much in common with Prince Charles, and actually they were very different people with very different interests, and that's when the cracks started appearing, and people have suggested, and we now know, that that was very soon after they returned from their honeymoon, so very early on in the marriage.
So he's basically a very kind and thoughtful and very sensitive person, and he just didn't understand somebody like Diana. She was much too young for him. Well, I used to say that Diana was a high school dropout and Charles was a university lecturer. I mean, Diana, they were so different, and obviously that can work very well, but she was very, very young and she'd had no experience of life. And although she'd lived on the Sandringham estate and knew the royal family, she didn't really know the royal family. And unless she didn't really know what it would be like to be married into them.
The turning point came at the start of the official visit to Germany, when the prince seemed to go out of his way to demonstrate his affection for his wife.
But my wife came here for the first time in 1985, when she visited one of the British regiments stationed here in her capacity as one of the more glamorous colonels in the British Army.
That was enough to convince the press that whatever they'd reported before, the royal marriage was in good health again. And the message was reinforced a fortnight later when the royal couple visited the victims of the Enniskillen bomb blast. The whole affair seems to have blown the froth off the fairy tale romance, but since their marriage 6 years ago, it's only Prince Charles's popularity that's suffered.
I think she thought it was all going to be sort of wonderful. So she'd been disappointed from the very beginning. And she had this vision of Charles, which wasn't really him at all. I mean, and then she started to find Charles very dull. And he found her stupid. I mean, she had a very quick wit, but she wasn't well read. She wasn't really educated, and Charles was highly educated.
My years at Westheath were certainly very happy ones indeed. I made many friends who I often see, and in spite of what Miss Rudge and my other teachers may have thought at the time, I did actually learn something. So you would never have known by my O-level results.
And all his friends were much, much older. So he started to dump his friends. And Diana's friends were all much, much younger. And so they started to lead separate lives very, very early on. And then Diana had children very, very quickly. I mean, William was born in 82, and she'd only got married in 81. And she had a very difficult pregnancy with William. So she was, she was getting used to being royal. She was pregnant. The marriage wasn't quite what she imagined it, but she thought it would all be all right. So she was living on a dream, really.
Like all almost 2-year-olds, Prince William has an endearing habit of wanting to do his own thing. The Prince and Princess of Wales had brought a ball along for him to play with, but all that really interested him were the cameras. He seemed rather puzzled, as well he might, faced with such a phalanx of photographers. Even Dad couldn't get him away from the fascination of all that clicking, and William doesn't yet much care for royal protocol.
Well, everybody about
Now the royal marriage was falling apart, and I was Diana's man, placed strategically at Highgrove, placed there to keep the house in order, but also to be there for Diana, to be there as a rock, she later called me. That's what I was there for. I was there to support her, to be there as a friend, as a confidant, and a butler. My role became more and more and more as the year passed. I was with her for 10 years in total, and began traveling with her around the world. To Angola, to Bosnia, to far-reach countries, searching out people who were less fortunate than we were, people who needed their plight heightened by an incredible icon of our times. So I witnessed that at first hand.
Especially now, as Christmas brings its own painful stresses to so many people in need. The sick, the old, the handicapped, and the homeless, the lonely, the confused, and the simply unloved, who are needing your help more than ever.
And that's a point to which I often refer, because that one moment of humanity changed my life. And I saw the princess in a different light. I saw her as beautiful inside as she was on the outside.
The Princess of Wales was a new kind of royal. She carried out her duties with elegance and style, just like other members of the royal family. But there was a difference. She wasn't stuffy, responding to people naturally, and the people took her to their hearts.
Diana as a person was, as I said at the very beginning, was about as normal as you're going to get. She was very considerate, always wanted to people's birthdays, enjoyed the company of her own friends. And the number of occasions that we would ever go on a public engagement, for most royals it's shaking hands with people behind a metal barrier. It's sort of a hand comes across and hello, you get pushed back. With Diana it was different. And I remember one incident in Manchester, and we were walking down some street in Manchester that had been terraced off with these metal railings. And we were walking down and she's chatting away, and suddenly she sees this elderly woman with a walking stick about 3 people back. And she said, "What are you doing over there?" And this sort of woman with this sort of manicure neck said, "Oh, she said, I want to say hello to you." She said, "Oh, just a minute." And got this, she said, "Get that policeman, Ken, and get that lady to come through here." So the lady, came through and, started chatting away there. And she said, "Look, you ought to get a warmer coat than that." So sort of suddenly, out of nowhere, you're getting this sort of princess that's now more concerned about somebody else in the crowd than herself. This was typical Diana. I saw that on so many occasions because she felt it was part of her duty rather than just turn up, shake and push a few people back, but was funny and, was cheeky.
The rest of the royal family and the royal household, they treated Diana as if she was just another gal. In fact, they didn't give her much consideration at all. I did notice that one day, going through the drawing room, the old Queen Mother, she passed the magazine table and Diana's face was on the front of Hello Magazine or something. And as she walked past the table, she flipped the magazine over onto its backside and carried on walking. That to me said, she's not really accepted. They don't like it. She's beginning to outshine even the senior members of the royal family. It's a dangerous territory.
The Queen and Diana weren't pally-pally, because Diana, she was too young, she didn't want to sit. She said, I don't want to have dinner with Brenda. She used to call her Brenda. In those days there was a satirical story that used to run in Private Eye every week. Queen was Brenda and I think Prince Philip was Stavros. But see, Diana was very quick-witted, but she didn't want to have dinner with the Queen on her own, because she said, I wouldn't know what to say to her. Well, I think Prince Philip, when he heard she was coming, he'd go into another room. So he just didn't want the confrontation with her. But at the beginning, yes, he had a very good relationship with her and he looked after her. And he made sure that she sat next to him at dinner and he brought her into the conversation. He could see how nervous she was with the whole situation. And I think the Queen really let him deal with it.
Painting a very tragic picture of how she was pitched into the royal family without any form of help, without any form of rehearsal, and how they were not able to help her evolve and grow up, and weren't able to appreciate what she was trying to do or give her lessons which she very much needed.
I remember the wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana Spencer very well because I was at Buckingham Palace. I was working for the Queen, and the Queen said to me, you can watch it on my telly. So take the corgis for a walk in the garden and then watch the telly and you'll know when we're coming back. I was responsible for the top table, which was the bride's table, the bride and groom, and of course the Queen and Prince Philip, and the bridesmaids. So I was waiting for the bride to come back. She'd appeared on the balcony of Buckingham Palace. And then, at the end of a very long red carpeted corridor, I noticed this ball of white racing towards me. And I realized it was Princess Diana. She'd rolled her train up into a ball, tucked it under her arm. She had her slippers in one hand, and she was racing down this corridor, lined with windows. And the diamonds of the Spencer family tiara were glinting in the sunshine. And she was racing towards me. Just me and her in one corridor. She was like a galleon in full sail. What a picture of hope and happiness and love. She had it all. She didn't eat a morsel. And she said to me later, I couldn't eat a thing, Paul. My stomach was in knots. I was just totally wound up by the day, by the excitement, by the spectacle. She says, but you know, the most wonderful thing was walking down the aisle of St. Paul's Cathedral with my father. She says, but did you ever look at the footage of that? I said, I've seen it many times. She says, next time you look at it, watch me. She says, can't you see me looking from side to side? Can you see me doing that? Do you know what I'm doing? I'm looking for her. I'm looking for Camilla. And she was there. She was even at my wedding.
That he who gives it and she who shall wear it may remain faithful to each other and abide in thy peace and favor and live together in love until their lives end.
With this ring,
I thee wed.
I thee wed.
With my body,
I
thee honor.
I thee honor.
And all my worldly goods with thee I share.
All thy goods with thee I share.
In the name of the Father,
in the name of the Father,
and of the Son,
and of the Son,
and of the Holy Ghost.
And of the Holy Ghost.
Amen.
Amen.
So this spectre of Camilla was always there in the princess's life.
Well, Charles was in love with Camilla from a very early age. You know, when he was still in the Navy, he fell in love with Camilla. She was funny, she was a great rider, and she made him laugh. And I think that she's very, very attractive to both men and women because of her personality. She's got a wonderful personality. And you know, when Charles first met her, I mean, she didn't care what she looked like, but you know, she was a great horsewoman, she was really sporty, and I suppose she was a challenge too, because you know, she was basically in love with Andrew Parker Bowles. So I think she had a lot of ingredients that Charles really, really fell in love with, and he never really fell out of love with her. So it is a very romantic story.
It was difficult for me to tread the path between Prince Charles and Princess Diana. Now, Diana arrived every weekend with the boys on Friday afternoon and left every Sunday, but someone else occupied that space in between. And I learned to serve two royal mistresses, one Princess of Wales and the other Mrs. Parker Bowles. It was impossible to do this balancing act between the prince and the princess, the prince during the week and the princess at the weekend, and then have someone else pop in to this ménage à trois. It was incredibly difficult because the princess would ring me up from London and say, "Where's Prince Charles tonight, Paul? Where's the Prince of Wales? He's out for dinner, Your Royal Highness. Where is he? I've no idea." "Of course you know where he is. You always know where he is." "Who's he got for dinner tomorrow night? I hear he's got a dinner party. Who's coming?" "Don't ask me. Please ask him. Don't put me in the middle." This was still a secret. I was keeping this secret for both the prince and the princess. Until, of course, it became intolerable. And the royal couple decided to split.
But I mean, in Diana's heart, she never wanted to leave Charles. But she was desperate. She'd had enough. And it was just so unpleasant. Although she knew she didn't want to leave Charles, being with him was worse than leaving him. So yes, she did want to leave him, but she didn't want to get divorced. She always hoped they would get it right in the end.
The woman at the centre of these latest royal revelations, Camilla Parker Bowles, was today at home with her family in Wiltshire. It's claimed in the second extract from the Jonathan Dimbleby biography, which is published in today's Sunday Times, that she and the Prince of Wales have had 3 separate affairs.
The Prince of Wales had just been on TV to admit adultery with Camilla Parker Bowles, and the princess that evening was due to go out to the Serpentine Gallery to see her old friend Lord Palumbo and open his new exhibition. "I can't go. I'm not going. I'm not going. It'll be too humiliating. The whole world now knows that Charles has been having an affair. He's admitted it." "You are going," I said. "I've got nothing to wear." "Yes, you have got something to wear." I went up to her wardrobe room and picked out a Christina Strombolian dress with a fishtail. "This is what you're going to wear," I said. "I can't fit into it." "Yes, you can. Put it on." So she slipped it on. Now, to complement that, I think we should have the pearl choker and the sapphire. That's all you need. High heels and those jewels. Right, she put them on and she looked $1 million. Remember, when you go out there, I said, you stride, you hold your head high, you smile, you engage, firm handshake. Say to yourself, I am Diana, Princess of Wales, and I am here to stay. I am the mother of the future King of England. Say it to yourself. Say it. I was told a long time ago I'd backed the loser. I'd gone with the one who would be forgotten. And here we are, 20 years later. We're still talking about her because Diana has become an icon. She tore out pages from that dusty old book and she rewrote those rules. She changed the royal family forever. She changed the rules for the women she'd never meet. She changed the rules for Catherine so that she would have a better life, a better passage. And whoever Harry marries, she changed the rules for her too. So in a way, she's changing the rules for her children. Her children, William and Harry, are her legacy to the world. They will finish their mother's work. Her untimely death catapulted those boys into the forefront of the royal family. They are the royal family's future. She had those two boys for long enough to instill in them her hopes, her dreams, and her ideals. And because she passed so soon and left her work unfinished, William and Harry are now relying on her influence to fulfill those dreams and hopes and ideals.
Spent working in an orphanage in the tiny African state of Lesotho. Here, a clue to a sensitive side with strong echoes of his mother.
And what you're seeing now is them finishing her work. They are able to go out into the crowd and touch people because of Diana. They're able to come down to people because of Diana. The royal family had never done that before. You see Diana with children on her knees. You see Harry with children on his knees. He's following his mother's example. Diana set the trend for this new royal family.
Well, we've got some nice tea bombs, 3 tea bombs for your children. And nice Scottish tea. I've loved it.